Looks like we have about 17 people so far. We will start right at noon. You guys, as you're coming in, you will notice that you are muted. We did that automatically. If you guys do have questions, you will receive an email at the end after the webinar that will give you an option to ask a question to Angela or Kevin directly. So stay on the lookout for that email. We still have people signing on. For those of you who are just now signing on, you have been muted automatically. It's just something we're doing for everyone because we have a lot of people attending this today. Look out for an email though after this is over. If you do have questions, you'll be able to reach out to Angela and Kevin directly with those questions. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Everyone, welcome to Angela Adams Consulting's theater production of Fight Club. Now for the main event. In the blue corner, we have a 20-year veteran of the I Know Best agency and top producer sales executive for 10 years running, who expects nothing less than 100% of the AM's undivided attention, Kevin the Closer Wheeler. And in the red corner, we have a 15-year veteran of the I Know Best agency, managing the largest book of business, 8 years running, and holding a CSR designation, Angela Goldenheart Bunch. So you guys know the rules. Keep it above the belt. Let's fight.
So, Angela, where's that quote I've been waiting on? I said I needed it yesterday. Where's that quote?
Well, if you would have checked your email, I don't have the date of birth that's correct. So I've reached out to the client on your behalf, by the way, just pointing that out, called them, done all the things, and I'm waiting on a response for you. I mean, didn't you play golf with them? Aren't y'all buddy? Like, can you not invite them to talk to them about this and say, hey, by the way, bring your date of birth?
Hey, time out there. First of all, in case you didn't know, I'm kind of like a big deal at the agency, okay? And then second, you need to be conscious that nothing happens in this agency unless I sell. The lights don't get turned on and you don't get a payroll. So, hey, I'll get to it when I want to, but I need that quote. Where's it at?
So I mean, I hear you, but do you hear me? I need your help, Kevin. Like, I've done everything I can do. And honestly, these, if they don't get put in, you don't get paid. So I mean, how is it that I don't get paid if you don't get paid? You don't get paid if I don't get paid. Like,
Well,
why don't you understand that? Like,
well,
I
you're,
get you're a big deal, but I'm kind of a big deal too.
well,
Renewals, like, I mean, you get paid on that too, right? Like, give me
well,
a break.
do you really do anything during the day? I mean, all I know is that you sit behind a computer screen and I think you're playing, solitaire. So I think you got a lot of time on your hands that, frankly, how hard is it to put in that little computer of yours, my quote, and give me an indication? Come on.
Okay, look, like honestly, I'm tired of doing this with you like all the time. Um, I hope your golf game is better than your communication game. Look, I'm over it. I'm done. If it gets done, great. I'm done. I'm done. Over it.
And then the curtains fade and we take a bow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you all for taking some time today and to spend on a topic that is common for almost all agencies. It is a dilemma why staff, producers don't understand what goes on with the account managers, and account managers don't understand what the producers' roles are. And so what we want to cover in the next 30 minutes is kind of give you some ideas to think about to help smooth over some of those issues. So when I'm going to be covering the producer side of things, we're going to be talking about the producer's mentality. And that's pretty critical. We got to figure out where that producer's head's at. The next is what is the role and the perception versus what's reality for a producer. Then we're going to talk about some common mistakes. And then finally, for a producer, if you're a producer on the call, what are some things that you should be held accountable for?
And I'm going to jump into the AM and CSA side. We're looking at their mentality, right? Because it's very different than the producer, what that role perception is versus reality. Some of the common mistakes that AMs and CSRs and customer service representatives that they make, and then of course how they can be accountable in the relationship.
So let's talk about the producer and his mentality. And if your agency has never taken an omni profile or a DISC profile, a psychological profile of your employees, you might be very surprised on what you find. That, in fact, when I had my own agency, I would evaluate not only future staff, but current staff, and only to find out that I had people pigeonholed in roles that they were not ready mentally to handle. And so when we look at these psychological tests, they're very illuminating on what a person's, how they're wired. And so typically a producer is going to be very, very strong in either the dominant or the influential categories, or a combination of both. Very, very strong in both of these. So when we look at what those psychological tests are telling us about a producer, well, that will tell us that they handle rejection very well. They don't like it, but they can handle it. They kind of rub it off and roll it off their sleeve, and they move on to the next. They're persistent. They always are trying to close. They're always, I don't want to say nagging, but they're always persistent to try to achieve the goal that they have, which is to try to sell an account. They're competitive. Most producers are sports oriented. They probably even played some sports in high school or maybe even college, or they may just play around the neighborhood or when they grew up, and they were super competitive. Always had to win. And winning is very critical for these folks. They have a great ability to analyze and determine what a client's needs are. They show a lot of empathy towards that. And they love the challenge of trying to figure out what is the pain point for a client or a prospect. And it doesn't matter if it's personal lines or commercial. They love the ability to try to analyze, find problems, find things, and then come back with solutions. Also, producers are typically the face of the agency because, let's face it, they're out on the road. They're out in the community. So they become a very important part of the agency because they are the face of it. And so as an agency owner, you want your producers to represent your organization at the very best in your community. And then finally, a producer has to sell. If they're not selling, then they're not going to succeed. They're going to starve. Or maybe they're just not in the right roles altogether. So a producer is going to be driven by having to sell, because if they don't sell, they don't get paid. So let's look at some of the perceptions. And Angela was teasing me there earlier on. Thank you for that, Angela, that I'm always on the golf course. And truth be known, when I grew up, my whole family was big into golf except me because I would find 4 hours of my life gone and I needed to spend it doing other things. And I could network better, not so much on a golf course. But for others, that the perception is, well, they're always goofing off. They're never in the office. I can never find them. They've got to be at the bar. They've got to be at the golf course. They got to be on some trip. Well, at the end of the day, that's not a false expectation or a false stereotype because a salesperson does have a ton of flexibility. They have a ton of flexibility, but they're only going to get paid when they've sold. So that may mean that they put in 20 hours a week or they may have put in 80 hours a week. You just may not know what they're doing between outside the hours of 9 to 5. And because they have that great flexibility, they get to decide when they work and how they work and what does it look like for them to network. So the reality is a producer is expected to build relationships with new prospects. And that can't be just in a quick handshake or a quick 5-minute meeting or a one-time visit and you think that the client's going to trust because this industry is a relationship industry and folks feel very comfortable buying from somebody that they trust and they have a relationship with. So our producers have got to get out and build those relationships. And a good producer is a hunter. They are not farmers. A farmer is somebody that I would say is sitting back waiting for the phone to ring or waiting for an email to come in. And a hunter is one that's constantly going out looking for that next opportunity. And they're trying to build those relationships, like I said. And the only way they're going to do it is to get out on the road and visit with different folks and be involved in different community projects or be on the golf course. So let's look at some common mistakes. One common mistake that a lot of folks have is that producers really don't care about account managers' needs to submit risks to market and consistently get complete apps. And well, the producer, they would like to do that, but in reality, while they're trying to build relationships, the opportunity to quote a new account, if they're in the office sitting at a desk, they are not going to be successful. They have to go out and visit with accounts. They have to go out and network. So just because they didn't get completed apps doesn't mean that they don't care. It just means that, or they didn't return the emails. They do care, but their focus is in reality trying to build those relationships. The second mistake is that they really don't care about getting the detail. They don't care about the apps. I'm always getting partial apps, not enough information. Where's the pictures that I need? Where is all the other documentations I need to support a risk before I can send it to market? Well, if we go back and look at that psychological profile, anybody that is a strong dominant or a strong influential person, their worst habits are detail. They're not wired for it at all. They're just not. In fact, if you try to hire somebody that is a strong, influential person or a dominant person to be an account manager, it is going to be a train wreck because they are never going to be happy. They're always going to be up, moving around the office because they're anxious, and doing the detail is not how they're wired. So remember, a producer is only going to get paid when they sell. So to them, they're going to get as much as they can, what they think is enough information to move on, and then they're off to the next one to try to get the next account. The other is that a lot of folks think that the producer really doesn't care or appreciate the account manager at all. Well, that's not 100% true. In reality, the producer cannot be successful unless they have a great account manager and a great team there to support them. But the key to make it plausible or to make it something that's going to work for both parties, key has got to be communication. Communication as far as setting expectation, setting what need by days are. In fact, as an account manager, you might want to consider asking that producer, hey, when you're going on the presentation to close the account, which it sounds like you're going to get, or I'm on the first meeting where we're trying to gather information, why don't you bring me along if you don't mind? Because odds are who you're talking to is the owner of another business. And guess what? They're probably a dominant or an influential person as well as your producer, and they don't like detail. So why don't you bring me along and introduce me to the owner's admin or the owner's right-hand person who does like the detail, and maybe the two of us can build up a relationship to get everything that we need. And that way we're really now surrounding that client or that prospect with our agency is here for you, and we're now here trying to be more influential over your decision on what we can do for you. So let's talk about accountability for a producer. First of all, hold yourself accountable for your role in this relationship with your account managers. Remember, as a producer, what your team needs from you is communication. They need clean and complete submissions. They need the supporting documents, and they need the narratives. Explain to me why, when we talk with the underwriter, why this account is going to be a good risk for them and they need to give us a good rate. And oh, please do not tell me that the account is best in class, because that drives underwriters nuts. That drives because we are all not dealing with accounts that are best in class. So what an account manager really doesn't need from a producer, they don't need constant interruptions. Where's my account? Where's my quote? Where's my quote? Where's my quote? Why aren't you done? Why aren't you done? Well, half-done reports or reports that are not legible are going to get put on the back burner. And you need to make sure that you're providing all the things that you need. And remember, your job is also to do frontline underwriting. Your job is to make sure that the account that you're trying to write, personal lines or commercial, makes no difference, is not going to tarnish the relationship with the agency and the companies that you represent. Okay? All right, Angela, take it over.
Now that we've talked about the rest, let's talk about the best. I'm kidding. That was a below the belt. Totally kidding. But let's talk about the AM and CSR mentality. They don't call me Golden Heart for no reason, but we want to talk about how different they are than the producers. When you look at those same, reports and testing, like the DISC report, and we use Omni, and you look at the producer versus AM CSR, the AMCSR, they're great relationship builders. They have that strong ability to multitask, which is why they can take on work from multiple producers and have multiple new applications coming in. They have, a heightened ability for problem solving, and also to delegate and actively listen to the client's needs. So they really are that support for a producer. If there's anything added, they're going to find it out. That's where they're bringing their expertise into the relationship, because it's just naturally who they are. So let's talk a little bit about the role, the perception, right? You heard it in our little banter, back and forth, but it really is kind of a perception. We all have CRMs. We use various software to really help us do things in the agency in a more efficient manner. So that perception sometimes is that the system does all the work for an account manager, when yes, automations are in place, but they're to help smooth things out. And it gives that perception to them that, well, if you have automations, what are you really doing? Like, they're doing emails for you, it's telling you basically what you need to do when you're filling it in. And there's also, that role, you have the time. So I want your time. The reality of that role is so different. Your role perception versus role reality is that we're really sitting on piles of paperwork when we're looking at the real reality of what an account manager does. It is constant emails, constant chaos, controlled chaos, but chaos. We also have the agency owner. Like, most time, maybe we're in office or we are in a remote environment, but if that agency principal says, hey, I've got a project I need you to do, we want to keep them happy above all else. The reality is we are truly a people pleaser, and sometimes to our own detriment. We want to really make everybody happy. And I think there just becomes a point that that's where that relationship gets so rocky with the your producers because of that, right? Like we want to please everybody, but we can't. And it's that controlled chaos, the constant, underwriting issues, getting new apps in, that sometimes just become overwhelming. And if we're not doing certain things, then it leads to what you saw between me and Kevin. So just like with the producers, let's talk about some of the common mistakes that AMs and CSRs have. One of the biggest common mistakes that you're going to see from an AM is kind of when it comes to communication. We're going to under communicate or we're going to over communicate. And when we look at really that mentality of a producer, we really should rely on what I like to call the 3 C's of communication. It's being clear, consistent, and concise, because that's the best way to communicate with somebody with the personality traits of a producer. It's also vital that when we talk about communication, that we take a proactive approach. We need that proactive communication to really create that synergistic team, which is what we want. And when we talk about proactive communication, that's really setting things up in advance, right? Most of the time, we live in a reactive environment. We're all so busy and we have these perceptions that we're waiting and then reacting. And that's causing that bob and weave. And now we're going to start throwing punches because I need it today, not yesterday. When had we had a set way of communicating, we would have literally avoided all of that ruckus. And that's really the goal when we look at how can we fix some of these mistakes. One of the second mistakes that we tend to make as account managers is that it's really our perception, right? You heard that. It's our assumptions. It's assuming that we don't need the producers or that producers are better than the agency, and, not really taking the time to understand what they do for the agency and how we rely on them for that new business. That indeed is their job. And yes, I can't win if a producer's not winning. So that brings you back to that first mistake in that communication. But the reality is we have to take out those assumptions. And by doing that and creating more communication and accepting that personality traits of the producer, that's going to get us where we need to be. So accountability on the AM's part, I look at it as being your own hero. You have to be accountable for the relationship. So you figure out, think outside the box, be creative. Think about how can we get together and have proactive communication using those 3 C's. It could be a 15-minute call on a Monday every week. It's consistent. It's concise. It's clear. So you're going to have a list, and you may find that eventually you guys get in such a rhythm, you're going to be friends. It'll be crazy, right? But your success really relies on that, really being accountable for your part in this relationship. And this is where I kind of like to add a little bit of a pro tip, which you heard a little bit in the argument between me and Kevin, is speak their language. Their language is money. They are hunters. So if that's the case and I want something or need something, I'm going to know that with a producer, money walks and everything else talks. So use that and push that button and say, look, instead of coming at him, come to him and say, look, I'm really struggling with this. This is your money and it's really stressing me out. If I don't get this in, it's not going to be on your commission for this month. Can you help me help you? I mean, you could pull a Jerry Maguire, help me help you. But honestly, when you come that way, you're going to find that you're going to have such, way better communication. They're going to want to talk to you because it's showing that you care about them and what they do. So hopefully that little pro tip helps you, but we're going to jump into a couple things of a little bit more of how or what you can do right now to really just kind of jumpstart some of what you're seeing. If you have your current insurance fight club in-house, let's consider a few things like having the producer introduce the account manager. I loved that about Kevin's presentation is, man, I never thought of that. Let's get the account manager in connection with the company's like manager. Beautiful, right? Because neither of those people that are producer or owner, they don't want to deal with that stuff. But these two, they definitely do, and they can get a lot done. Also, maybe a checklist. I mean, they work, but they don't work. It kind of depends. It really is whatever your needs are. Like that's where you need to have that conversation and create a what I would like to call communication love language. Like how does that producer want to be communicated with and what works the best? And agree on those communicating best practices together. And then have that weekly check-in, whether it's a meeting or even just a spreadsheet or the checklist, send it in by this time every month, whatever, or every week, whatever works for you guys. But those are just a few of ideas that you can hopefully start today to, do a better job refereeing that relationship or your own in-agency fight club. So let's talk about how we might be able to help. A few things that we can help with if, you want that extra referee in your court, it's consulting on workflows.
Another idea is employee evaluation. Most of you probably have received some marketing information about us. This is one of our programs of the month where we're helping evaluate staff, whether it's producer or account managers. And even in one situation, we have an agency, when we asked the owner, what are you doing? And he says, well, I'm heavily involved in the sales process. Well, guess what? We're going to evaluate you too. And so that is another thing that we might be able to help to maybe uncover some underlying issues that you're having.
And one of my favorite things is coaching a team on collaboration techniques and communication. It's sometimes just having that outside person that really can be a referee and open things up that they might not want to say, and then really working on those techniques to collaborate and communicate better together.
A common one that we see in a lot of agencies is that they think they have a procedure, they think they have things outlined, but when we ask, so you have it documented? No, well, no, it's just kind of what we do. And so one of the things that we can help is create those standard operating procedures and those role outlines. So now everybody, not only if you're bringing in somebody new, you have a training tool, but more importantly, now you have something that you can actually gauge your team on. Are they following the agency's best practices?
And the last one literally gets my soul singing, which is coaching on collaborative cross sells, because it's really a way for the AM and producer to really work together to create additional revenue for the company. And that I feel like is huge in creating that synergistic team that we talk about at Angela Adams. So if there's any of those types of things that you feel like Kevin or I can jump in and help you on, we would be more than happy to assist you in any way that we can on any of these things, or even maybe things we haven't thought of. So we are here to be your sounding board. We're down to the last little bit here. You will be able to email us some questions if you would like, and we would be happy to answer you. But we want to thank you guys so much for coming in and, dropping in on our fight club, which obviously me and Kevin truly work well together, if you can't tell. But we're here for you. We appreciate you guys, and we hope you have a great rest of your day, and this helps solve your own internal fight club.
Thank you all.